Hello, guys. Good morning. How are you? My name is Maximiliano. You can call me Max if you want. We're going to talk about the mobile web. Right here, my idea in this talk is to give you an introduction of all the challenges that we usually have when we are doing mobile apps. Then we're going to talk specifically about the mobile web and HTML5. I'm using web technologies to deliver mobile solutions. So I'm from Argentina. I have just arrived from there. So yes, the answer is yes. It was a long flight. I have written some books, Priming the Mobile Web and jQuery Mobile from O'Reilly Media. And I'm also the creator of this website that it's basically a compatibility table for APIs on HTML5 on mobile platforms. So I will basically talk about 5 topics here. Mobile today, challenges, performance, tools, and future-friendly. Okay, we are going to cover these 5 topics in an hour. I will try to keep like 10 minutes at least at the end, so keep your questions to the end. After that, I will be outside also. So let's start. So mobile today. Usually, if I try to give you an idea, it's like this, right? A jungle. I mean, if you try to understand mobile, right now it's a jungle. Or worst, it looks like a minefield, okay? So I'm not sure if you have had this feeling, right? Like being walking on a minefield. That if you have any experience with mobile apps or supporting mobile apps or mobile websites, usually you have this feeling of a minefield. What's the feeling of a minefield? I don't have experience walking on a minefield, right? But basically, the idea is that you don't have a clear path. You're not really sure what to do or how to do it. So that's usually the problem when we are working with mobile, okay? And I will try to show you some real examples of why, okay? So usually, when you start a new project, I mean, at your company, you're starting a new project, or you work on a new project on mobile, usually you have 2 options, right, today. You're going to create websites for mobile devices, or you're going to create apps, such as an iOS app, an Android app, or a Windows Phone app. So the reality is that when you think about HTML5, you think about websites. But it's far more complex than this, and let me show you some ideas on why. On mobile, we can create different kind of experiences. Of course, we can create websites. You all know what a website is, but just a quick reminder, the browser, URL, and a web server. We can also create web apps. And I want to stop here like a couple of minutes to show you a real web app, so you can understand what a web app is. Unfortunately, on the mobile space, right now, we don't have clear definitions. So for one guy, a web app can be something different, okay? But let's say that this year we are coming to one specific definition of what a web app is. So I will get out of the presentation for 1 second, and I will open my iOS simulator. So this is basically an iPhone, okay? So this is a website. You can see I'm using Safari. It's a website. But the website is saying, hey, can you add me to your home screen? So if I do that, right, now I have an icon on the home screen. And I'm pretty sure that you're thinking, OK, that's just a shortcut, okay, to the website. Well, yes and no, because when I'm opening this, okay, it's asking me for permission to get in my location. I say OK. So now it's a full screen app. So it's not, there is no browser UI, no URL bar, no toolbar at the bottom for going back, for example. Even if you look in the OS, it looks like a different app, okay? So it's not a native app. It wasn't downloaded from the App Store. And it's outside of Safari. In fact, technically, it's not running inside Safari. It's running in a different process. So another big example is the Financial Times. So they have a web app, same thing. So app.ft.com. You can install it on the home screen. And then you have an app that, by the way, can work offline, so without connection. So I can basically use this as a native app. From a user's perspective, at this point, it looks like an app, okay? It's an app. It's there as a different app, right? So this is basically a web app. In this case, I'm showing you an example on iOS, but you can do the same thing on Chrome and Android too, okay? So just a quick idea of what a web app is right now. So going back here. So a web app needs a browser, so we can install the web app. It's full screen. It has an icon on the home screen, and we still need a web server. So even if we are installing the app in the idea of using some APIs on HTML5 to install the app, you still need the web server if anything happens. Okay, so we need a web server. So it's like a website on steroids. So that's a web app. Web apps are also known as full screen web apps or home screen web apps. I'm also pretty sure you have heard about native web apps. So a native web app is also the idea of using HTML5, or when I'm saying HTML5, I'm talking about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And a native web app means that we are going to package that HTML content into a native app. Okay. So for example, the Wikipedia app, the Basecamp app, there are a couple of examples of good apps that are written in HTML. Also, there are a couple of examples of very bad apps in terms of performance and UI. So in this case, we are packaging, compiling, and signing the app. We still have an icon on the home screen, like the previous example, but we need to go through the App Store with the advantages and disadvantages of using the App Store. And we don't need a web server to host the files. Okay, so that's at least the files of the app. And finally, well, before that, sometimes we use the name hybrid. Okay, hybrids or packaged web app for these kind of native web apps. And finally, we have native apps that I'm pretty sure you already know what they are, that are not using web technologies, so such as Java for Android, Java, not the Oracle Java, but Java for Android, Objective-C for iOS, or .NET for Windows Phone. So it wasn't just websites or apps. In fact, talking about website or apps, usually it's end user point of view, not a developer's point of view. We have websites, we have apps, and we can create apps in 3 different ways: natively, using web apps, or native web apps. Okay, so that's the reality today. And when we are getting into just HTML5, so from now on, I will focus just on web technologies on mobile devices. If I ask you how many browsers do you know on desktop? Is 5 okay? More or less? But how many browsers do you know on mobile? Usually, you don't know. You can say 2, 3, 5, 40. It's like any value seems okay. So let me give you some examples. Android browser is the default browser on Android, okay, at least until 4.4, KitKat. And unfortunately, every version of Android has a different browser. I mean, it's the same name. It's called browser. It doesn't have a name. It's not Google Chrome, right? It's a very different engine. I mean, it's WebKit-based, but it's different in its code base, in its compatibility, and also in performance. And every version has a different engine, basically. Even if you have a Samsung device, such as any Galaxy device, the browser you have there is not the same browser as in the Android source code, so in the Android project. So it's a different one. It's based on Chromium. So you need to understand this to see what's happening in the real world when you are testing, for example, or doing things for mobile. Even when talking about Android, so in that particular figure, you can see every color is a different company, a different vendor, like Samsung, Sony, LG, and every little rectangle there, it's a different device, okay? So on Android. So that's the fragmentation that we have just on Android. And it's really difficult to test, for example, if you want to test everywhere, or at least to pick the phones that you are going to use for testing. Of course, we have Google Chrome now for Android, also for iOS. I'm not sure how many iOS users do we have here using Chrome. I have a bad news for you. Chrome on iOS, it's not really Chrome. So it's not really using, and it's from a developer's perspective at least, it's not using the Chrome engine. It's just Safari with a Chrome UI. So, and that's basically not because of Google. It's not a Google fault. It's an Apple restriction. So on the App Store, you cannot send a different web engine. That's why there is no Firefox for iOS. So, but that's something we need to understand, right? Because when people are browsing our web app or website from Chrome on iOS, we need to understand it's not Chrome. Of course, we have Safari on iOS. That's the default browser on iPhone and iPads, also iPod Touch. Opera in different versions, Firefox, and now we have Firefox OS, a full OS based on HTML5. We have our friend, right, Internet Explorer, on different versions, because we have the Windows Phone version, we have now tablets with Windows 10 or 11. Nokia browser also in different versions with different code base. Or Asha, the low-end devices, the new Nokia X, that is basically Android, but it's not using the Android browser. It has a different browser called Nokia browser. Amazon Silk, I'm not sure if you have heard about this browser. It's the browser inside Fire OS. Fire OS is the Android-related OS that is coming into any tablet from Amazon and a possible future phone also. So it's not using Chrome, it's not using the Android browser, it's using Amazon Silk, right? Different browser. UC Web, have you heard about UC Web? Also known as UC Browser. 10% of the web browsing market share from a mobile phone worldwide is from using this browser. So it's basically the browser mostly in the Chinese market, Indian market, Pakistani market. So a lot of people are browsing the web using this browser. So I think you get the idea that it's not so simple, right? And I know what you're thinking. And let me give you an introduction in a minute about should we care about all these browsers? But we have something different in mobile that is known as cloud-based browsers or proxy-based browser. So if you are browsing the web using the Nokia browser, the second one is the UC browser, Opera Mini, Silk, or even Google Chrome enable a feature on Android and on iOS. Basically, you are not browsing the web directly. You are browsing the web through the cloud. That means that on your server, it's not the user asking for your files, for the HTML, the CSS files through HTTP. It's the cloud. It's the Amazon cloud, the Google cloud, and everything is being rendered in their servers, and you as a user, you are getting just a compressed, pre-rendered version of everything. So that means that sometimes your JavaScript is not being executed locally, but on the cloud. So for testing, you need to understand that, because maybe you're doing some kind of UI testing using JavaScript, using client code, but it's not really client code at this point, it's cloud code, okay? So this is just for giving you an idea of the problems that we need to deal with when we are working in the mobile web space. And it's not just the browsers, there is also something called the web view. So if you have heard about the web view is like having an embedded browser inside the native app. So basically Chrome on iOS is using the web view. If you have an iPhone and you use Facebook and you click on a link on Facebook, you are not getting that link on Safari. You are getting that link inside the little browser inside Facebook. And that's basically the web view. And what's different about the web view? Well, sometimes the HTML5 APIs don't work in the same way, and sometimes performance is different. Okay, I will get into that later. So maybe you're thinking, okay, a lot of browsers are out there, but we just care about, for example, iOS and Android. Okay, or I'm seeing this a lot into the web community, that you need to just support Safari and Chrome, and you are done. Okay, so let me show you some stats. So in US, 40% of the users browsing the web through a mobile phone, so 40% are not using Safari or Chrome. They're using a different browser, mostly Android browser. That is not Chrome, okay? It's a different browser. So India, for example, it's 97% of the people that are not using Safari or Chrome. So let's come to this area. I mean, Europe, it's half of the people are browsing with Safari or Chrome, and half of the people are using different browsers. And that is a mix between Android browser, Opera, Nokia browser. So this is real, actual people this month browsing the web using a mobile phone. Okay? I'm not talking about phones on users' pockets. I'm talking about users browsing the web. I'm talking about Poland, right? It's 75% of the people browsing the web through a mobile phone is not using Safari or Chrome. So we need to understand that it's not so easy. These are the data from Poland, right? So half of you are on Android browser, then Chrome, Opera, Nokia, blah, 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 and then iOS, right? So you don't have iPhones, it seems, right? Too expensive, I think, right, here? So people are not browsing in Poland with iPhones. Only 1% of the people are using iPhones. So then usually we have different strategies when we are working with mobile websites. So I'm pretty sure you are aware of some of these strategies, such as the old separate m dot something, right? So to access a mobile website, you need to type m dot, or you're going to have a redirect from the homepage. Then another strategy is to have a separate site using the same URL. So basically, you have a server-side mechanism to say, OK, this is a mobile phone. I need to send the user this template, for example. Okay, but we are using the same URL. That's pretty interesting, using the same URL for social sharing. Okay, because maybe I'm looking into an article. I want to share the article on Facebook, on Twitter, and I don't know my followers, if my followers are going to browse using the mobile phone, using a desktop, a TV, or wherever. Okay, then we have responsive web design. We'll get into that idea later. And then we have do nothing. Okay, doing nothing means, okay, our browsers are smart enough to show any website, any desktop-optimized website on the mobile phone. So why should we care about mobile? Okay. So I will try to give you an idea of what should we do to be more future-friendly in the next couple of minutes. There are a couple of articles right now. Right, this is TechCrunch, I think last week, saying that the web is dying. Have you heard about this? Like the web is dying. So because they're talking about like the apps world is taking over the web. So the reality is that the web is not dying. I mean, maybe the web is shifting. It's having maybe an identity crisis sometimes. But I mean, it's still the same web. Maybe we are accessing the web in different ways. Okay, but it's not like the web is dying, because if not, you are going to lose your jobs maybe. So I was thinking about this. Last year, I was in Helsinki, right in the airport, and I was seeing this sign. So the airport in your pocket, download the official Helsinki airport app. And I was thinking, in the last 2 years, I have been in 55 different airports, okay, 55. So do I need to download one app per airport? So why do I need an app on those cases? So the web shouldn't be dying, okay? Because for some kind of purposes, such as verifying information on the airport, I don't need an app. Oh, I need a temporary app, or whatever we're going to call that in the future, maybe a website. But I mean, the web is not dying. For some kind of use cases, users prefer apps. I mean, with the idea of an app, of having that app with an icon pre-installed, and maybe with some rich features. But for some other purposes, we are still going to have some kind of temporary access to content. It can be a website, or it can be just talking to Siri. I don't know, right? But we will still have websites. So then we have this, the monster of Facebook. I'm not sure if you have heard about this. It was 2 years ago that Mark Zuckerberg said that HTML5 was not ready, so they have to change their hybrid app using HTML5 to a full native app. That was 2 years ago, okay? So now, I mean, and now means last week, okay? The Basecamp guys, they have released a really nice post that I suggest you to read about their new app, the iOS app, the Basecamp iOS app, okay? It's a hybrid solution. They're using HTML, and they're mixing this, native navigation with web content, okay? So some quotes from there. We were simply orders of magnitude more productive by using the web and HTML. The app has a 4-5-star rating, okay? So it doesn't have performance issues, means working properly. Maybe you are users of this app and you didn't know it was HTML5. I think every software shop today should take another look at the hybrid approach, because the mobile ecosystem changes so fast that it's very different than 2 years ago. okay, when Facebook had some issues there. So don't underestimate mobile. It's not so simple. It's not iOS or Android and we are done, okay? We have a lot of platforms. We have a lot of browsers with different versions. You need to understand the ecosystem if you want to support mobile developers or mobile web developers. And there are different approaches available. So maybe in your project, in your solution, you need to think about all the possibilities and find the right one. Then let's talk about some challenges, okay, that we have when we are working with the mobile web. First, we have this cross everything. So that means, for example, cross-platform, cross-version, cross-screen size, cross-screen density. So, for example, this is a picture of the floor at my house, right? So, and in fact, it's a bit old. I need a new one. Right now, today, I have 43 different devices, right? Between phones, tablets, and wearable devices. 43, just for testing and for doing some work. So these are all the available screen sizes right now in the market. So I'm pretty sure that maybe you know 2 or 3 of them. I'm not sure if you know what QQVGA means, for example, right? Or WQXGA. And this is how these different resolutions look like one over the other. So that's a problem for the designers, right? Not for us. But there are some issues that maybe we need to understand to support the web designers. And I will get into that later. Again, looking at this Android fragmentation, that's another challenge that we as a web solution need to understand to solve the problem of multi-platform. Then there is this website, WTFmobileweb.com, okay? So the next big challenge is to solve the usability problems. There are hundreds of different websites that are terrible on mobile. I'm pretty sure that you have experienced these kind of problems there. But usability is a problem on mobile devices, even when you try to access a website that should give you just quick information about, I don't know, a conference, and then you say, no, you need to go to your desktop. And say, come on, I'm the one trying to get information. I want to get information from here. Why should I go to my desktop, okay? So there are a lot of problems on the mobile web, a lot of challenges, and sometimes the companies are not making the right decisions about how to solve the problem. And of course, if you ask, you can try yourself, or you can ask in your own project about stats, I mean, on visits, but everyone tells me that, everyone is telling me right now that it's changing so fast that on some companies, they're getting more traffic on mobile from mobile phones than from the desktop. Okay, it depends on the company, it depends on the kind of project you're working on. Then we have user identification. That means for logging, okay? So you want to identify your users. So I'm pretty sure you have a lot of apps in your smartphones, and usually you don't want to get a username, right, to each app. And I'm pretty sure you know that, for example, you can use the Facebook SDK, or the apps can use Facebook SDK, so you can identify your users using the Facebook SDK, okay? But the problem is that usually when you want to use an app, you need to marry the app, okay? Because it gets everything from you. And that's a challenge we need to solve right now. So Facebook is working on a solution. There will be an anonymous login that will maybe help in the future. But if you are supporting mobile apps, mobile websites, so user identification is another challenge. So you need to see that people, your users, are angry, right? So I'm pretty sure you as users are also angry with some websites when you are trying to access them on your mobile phones. So you are getting angry users, and you're also getting frustrated users, okay? So you need to be careful about how your company treats your users when they are using their mobile phones to access your service. So don't frustrate your users. You always need to think about the multi-everything. Usability matters a lot, and performance, okay? Performance is really important. So talking about performance, okay, let's get into that at least really quickly, because we don't have enough time to cover all the topics about performance. But okay, maybe you're thinking, we have 4G now, or good 3G, right? We don't need to worry about performance on mobile anymore. That's usually something I'm hearing a lot at this point. So let me show you some data, okay? So I'm from Argentina, so I'm more a football guy, but you know that in US, they're more about the Super Bowl. Keynote, the company behind Performance Solutions, they did a test on the advertisers of the Super Bowl, the final. So if you look there, 12 sites have a mobile version. 2 of them had no solution for mobile, just the desktop website, and 14 has a responsive web design solution, right? That means that the same HTML, okay, is being delivered to all the devices, but they have a different CSS, so it has like a mobile layout on mobile devices. But look at the size, the average size of the homepage, okay? So on the responsive side, you have more than 3 megabytes per user accessing your website, your homepage, okay, from a mobile phone. You don't need to understand the graphic. You just need to read all the orange lines here, okay? So the orange lines means that's time, okay? Time in seconds on a mobile phone, okay? You have there tablets, desktop, and phones. So on phones, it's always slower, okay? Even on, I think it's Pepsi.com, the last one, it's like a minute, right, to load the homepage on a mobile phone. So you need to be very careful about performance. Usually when we are talking about 3G or 4G, we are talking about bandwidth, okay? But bandwidth, it's not really the important thing when we are talking about web browsing. So when we are talking about web browsing, right, we need to understand that when we are working on cellular networks, like 3G or 4G, we have a different scenario. Basically, it's the latency, right? The wireless latency that gives you big problems when talking about performance, because the latency, that's milliseconds, in 2G can be up to 1 second. So basically, every package can have 1 second of latency. On 3G and 4G, it's better, but it's still 5 to 10 times bigger than a desktop connection, or I mean a home connection or an office connection. Okay, so here you have a big problem on latency on mobile devices. And based on reviews from users, usually performance is the biggest issue on mobile. So people concerned about performance. So people want fast solutions. I want to access my content as fast as possible. Sometimes when we are working with mobile, it's not just about the load time. It's also about perception. So sometimes it's, I mean, maybe the real load time is not really important, but the perception of being fast, okay? We need to give a real good experience to the user. And sometimes we are not doing that. So because we have other goals, and I will get into goals in a minute. Examples, okay? American Airlines website for mobile devices. When you access the American Airlines mobile website, you have from 5 to 8 different redirects, so HTTP 302 or 301s. So that means that you are losing, on mobile devices, on average, about 5 to 6 seconds of nothing, right? Of the server just jumping the client from one host to another one. So it's like a slow down sign there. So we don't need that. So if you are working on this kind of solution, be really careful about this kind of redirects you have. And sometimes we have a stop sign that is worse. Like, I'm pretty sure that you have seen this before, such as, for example, if you have LinkedIn and you have received an invitation from LinkedIn and you click on your mobile phone, you want to accept the invitation, for example, but then instead of seeing that, you're getting a banner saying, hey, download our app, okay? And usually you just want to accept the invitation. I don't want to download or use the app. Maybe I already have the app, okay? I just want to click there. Or if you are Googling something and then you click on one result and instead of having the information you want, you have a download my app. And usually the reaction is that I don't want your beautiful app, okay? So That's a website you can check there. So that's something that we need to change, right? There are a couple of solutions to change that. I mean, to invite the user, but still not being so annoying to the web user. But there are a couple of companies doing like great things in this area, such as TripAdvisor, for example. At the beginning, TripAdvisor, when you were Googling something like reviews of my hotel, so I Google reviews, hotel, blah, blah, and then you get the result. You click there, and a few months ago, you had download my app. And a lot of people were getting out of there, so going back. So you are losing the user. And right now, they will show you the content. And then if you browse on that web TripAdvisor mobile website for a while, let's say 3 or 4 links, then you will see, okay, now do you want a better experience? Download our app. So you need to first get the trust from the user. Okay, so that's something that well, we can have. And then let's talk 1 second about responsive web design. So responsive web design, let me get out of here for 1 second again. I will create a new window. So I'm pretty sure you are coffee lovers, maybe. So I'm pretty sure you know about Starbucks, okay? So the Starbucks US website is a responsive website, okay? So basically responsive means, and usually we think that it's about resizing the browser. So if you resize the browser, then you get a tablet experience, like the phone experience, and blah, blah, blah. So the same HTML, changing dynamically CSS and images is giving different experiences in different kind of menus. So where is the problem with, in this particular Starbucks example? Well, it's really nice. I mean, you can go to your mom and say, hey, mom, I can resize the browser. Look how cool is this. But the thing is that the user is not doing that, okay? The user is accessing Starbucks.com website from a desktop, from a tablet, or from a phone, right? It doesn't care about resizing the browser. And the main problem is that in this particular case, it depends on the day, but sometimes on a mobile phone, you get 2 to 3 megabytes homepage, right? Because it's downloading all the JavaScript, all the CSS, all the images, maybe not all the images, but most of the images, even the images and CSS and JavaScript that are not useful for that particular device. So that's an issue that we have right now with responsive web design. Responsive web design, it's a great tool for designing, okay? But it's not the first priority. So there is no priority on responsive. You need to be responsive. Why is that? I mean, responsive can be a tool for your goal. So responsive web design is harming performance by default. Okay, by default, it's harming performance if you don't understand what you're doing. So remember your goal. Your goal should be fast, reliable, quick to access. I mean, you want conversions. I mean, your company or your managers they want conversions. And conversion means a happy user. For a happy user, you need a fast experience, easy to use, blah, blah, blah. Be responsive or not, it's not a goal. Maybe your designer can decide to use responsive web design for your goal. But it shouldn't be the goal. I'm pretty sure that on your companies, there are a couple of projects right now saying, okay, the project, I mean, the title of the project is our new responsive website. And in that case, you are making responsive the goal. And that's the problem, okay? Because it shouldn't be a goal. It shouldn't be an objective. So don't penalize your users because they are browsing your website from a mobile phone. Okay? Don't give them big JavaScript files that you are not even using. Okay? And there are a couple of good responsive websites created, so it's not like responsive is bad. Okay? But you need to understand what you're doing. So performance should be your primary goal, your primary objective on mobile. Top priority number 1. Don't penalize your users, okay? Sending big images or big CSS files. Be careful about responsive web design. Take an alarm when you're seeing people creating responsive websites. Don't redirect. Don't stop your user, okay? So that's important. If you want to get more about performance, so I'm doing the workshop here on Wednesday at Atmosphere. So it's a practical training. So I hope I can see some of you there. So now tools. So there is a new set of tools available for supporting the mobile web. Maybe some tools for you, some tools for your developers, but you need to understand how they work. We have simulators, emulators. There is a difference between them. Basically, the emulator usually it's a virtual machine. Right? I'm running the full OS. I'm virtualizing the full OS. And a simulator is an app that looks like, right? But it's just a skin, okay? Usually. And of course, we can use real devices. For real devices, you can use also a device lab or a virtual lab. So there are a couple of open device labs in different cities in the world, so opendevicelab.org. So it's places where you can go. They're free. It's a free service where you can go and test on real devices, test your app, your websites. You can create your own lab, or you can use virtual labs. So again, I don't have enough time to show you everything, but here I have, for example, two solutions. One from Samsung, okay? It's called Remote Test Lab, okay? Where you can use real phones for free, right, through the cloud. So it's like a remote desktop, basically. So you have, if you want, you have S5, for example, here. Even you have S5s with some smartwatches, okay? And you're using a real phone. Nokia has also a free service, Nokia, Microsoft now. So where you can use, for example, Nokia X devices, Windows Phone Lumias, okay? Even if you pay attention here, you can see a phone number. So that's the phone number from Finland. So you can use the phone remotely, and you can even call you, okay? So it's a real phone through a network. These are free solutions, and there are also commercial solutions if you want to target other devices. Just to give you an idea of new tools that appears for mobile developers and mobile web developers. We have remote inspectors. So if we have time later, I can give you a quick demo. But basically, with a remote inspection tool, you can connect your phone through the USB to your desktop, and you can inspect remotely your website or your web app. Okay, that means JavaScript debugging, HTML and CSS debugging directly on your phone. And you can have a 3G connection or a 4G connection on your phone and, for example, measure real performance through your desktop. Okay, because when you're using your desktop, it's your corporate connection. I mean, it's always fast. But you need to test that on a real 3G connection to see how it works. Proxies, sniffers, there are a lot of solutions specifically for mobile devices, so you can see what's happening in the 3G connection and try to find, for example, problems on the bandwidth or the latency on 3G. So you can try to measure that using these solutions. There are some testing tools. Mostly they are right now appearing, so it's like a new category in the testing area, working with mobile devices, native apps, native web apps, or websites. So you have different solutions, different frameworks that are starting to appear to create some automated testing tools for mobile devices. And finally, you have also connection simulators. I mean, it's not a replacement from a real phone with a real network, but you can still use it. But you have a connection simulators for Mac, for Windows, available for free, or commercials, that basically will throttle your connection. So you can try to see what's happening. The latest version of Chrome supports that in the developer tools too. So you can throttle your connection and simulate a 3G connection in terms of bandwidth and latency and packet loss. So you need to understand these, you or your team, right, need to understand these tools to measure and get real information from real devices. And usually creating your own mobile test lab is a good idea. Finally, let's talk about how to be future friendly. Well, the first thing, this guy, right, I'm not sure if you have heard about him, right? It looks a bit frozen at this point, but Heraclitus, right? He said a couple of centuries ago that change is the only constant. And that's basically a good definition for mobile, okay? The only thing that we know for sure is that everything is going to change. So we need to design our solution for the change. So that's the only way to be happy in this world, in this mobile world, okay? Everything is going to change. So have that in mind. Embrace the change. So, and now we have wearables, okay? So wearable devices. We have smartwatches, right? I have one smartwatch here. So I'm looking at the time, and I have apps here. So we have something like smart glasses. Here I have a Google Glass, for example, right? So maybe we need to develop solutions for the glass in the future. We don't know, right? But we know that it's going to change. It can be smartwatches, smart glasses. Even there are some smart bras out there. That's a patent from Microsoft, by the way. So from smartwatches and smart glasses, for this new category of devices out there, usually we need to provide a different kind of solution. And that solution is basically push technologies, okay? So you need to start to support push technologies. Push technologies, it's something that goes server side, so usually it has nothing to do or too less to do with the client side. So it's not about the app itself, it's about the server. So you need to create your own architecture for push notifications that will connect to all the devices, smartphones, maybe TVs in the future, and wearable devices. So these devices are usually more push optimized. So basically you are going to send, for example, the weather information to the device, and not the user is not going to get that information directly. So to make a quick explanation, the idea is that the information will come when I need it, before I ask for it. So for example, if I'm in the bus stop and I turn on my smartwatch, I should get information of the next tram or bus. So it will come in 5 minutes without asking for it, because it knows where I am. It knows that I have just stopped there for a couple of seconds, so maybe I want that information. So basically, if you have seen Google Now, if you have an Android, you have seen Google Now, the idea of the cards is basically what is happening here, or for example, on my glass. It's exactly the same thing. So push is something interesting that you need to support. Then progressive enhancement through feature detection. So usually, right now, a lot of people are trying to focus on devices. So I want to do this for the iPhone. I want to do this for this device. I'm not saying that sometimes you need to do that, okay? So sometimes you need to be device specific. But as a general rule, it's not a good idea to be happy, right? Because we know everything is going to change. So feature detection means, okay, does this device have geolocation? Well, then I will enable the geolocation feature of my app. I don't really need to know which device it is. I mean, maybe it's a device I don't know right now. It's a device that will be available in the future. In terms of APIs, right, usually the server side, I mean, the backend should support not only the APIs for the service itself, but also API for notification. That means making new users, deleting information from the user, adding channels to the user. That usually means, for example, if the user will receive all the information or just some parts of the information. Also sync. So I'm not sure about you, but you know that I'm full of devices, okay? So I have my tablet, my computer, my smartwatch, my smart glass. So if I forget to turn this off, right, and I'm sleeping, somebody sends me an email, right? My bedroom looks like Christmas, right? Because all the devices are shining and vibrating. So there is an issue that we need to solve. Is about synchronization. So for example, that send information just to the device that the user is using at that point, okay? And synchronize that information between devices. That is something that you need to look into for the service that you're working on for the future, right? On the future, the user will use different devices, right? The TV, my car, anything I'm wearing, my phone, my tablet. I don't want to see the email on each of my devices, okay? Or even the notification. So it depends on the time. Maybe if I'm on a meeting, I will get a notification on my smartwatch. If I'm walking, maybe on a smart glass, I don't know. I mean, but something like that, some kind of a framework for doing that, it's interesting for the future. And you need to support APIs for native apps, website, and web apps, because you will need to support all the solutions. So maybe you are going to create native apps, and that's a good idea. but you also need to support the website. And you need a way to support both, okay? So you need to think about that a lot. And of course, the push notification. There is something called the REST. Remember the responsive web design problem that you are serving the same files for everything? So usually designers, web designers, are really happy with responsive web design because they have one solution that will fit any device. I mean, that's in theory, and that's in a world where everybody is connected through a real good Wi-Fi connection. But that's not the real world. So in the real world, on a mobile phone, on a cellular connection, you need, as fast as possible, you need to serve just the files you need, and maybe less than the files you need. So REST is responsive web design with server components. And that means you will use detection libraries to detect features server side. So server side, you will detect that, okay, it's an iPhone. Okay, if it's an iPhone, I need to remove this CSS, this HTML, and change that. So it's like responsive web design, but not all the decisions are client-based. There are server-side decisions, okay? The biggest problem right now with this is that the decisions usually are from the front-end engineers. I mean, the front-end people, they want to make the decision. If it's an iPhone, then I need to support this CSS and then this HTML. And the problem right now is that front-end people usually are fighting with back-end people. They say, oh, now you want to do that. They need to wait a month to get that done, right? And so some companies, I know that some companies are thinking on a new server architecture, right? They're adding a new layer in the middle. Some of them are talking about front-end server. It looks weird, right? But that is managed by the front-end engineer, and usually they're using Node.js for that. So, of course, the front-end will not touch the APIs, the push notifications, all the back-end, but will make some small decisions in terms of, for basically delivery, okay? So, for example, if it's an iPhone, if it doesn't support blah, blah, then I will change the CSS or the JavaScript file I'm delivering. So then the front-end guys don't need to call the back-end guys to make changes on that logic, okay? So that is something that might be interesting in the future. So your goal should not be to create an app for X platform, okay? Let's do the Android app, okay? So your goal should be support a multi-device user. And in that project, it's a project that never ends, unfortunately, right? It's a project that then you need to change it all the time. If you do that, it will be easy for you and you will be happier. Instead of doing the Android app, and when you're finished, you know that now you have Android 6 and you need to change everything. So it's an issue when you have fixed projects based on one platform, because this is changing so fast that you need to have a bigger project that never ends. So don't underestimate mobile, okay? So mobile is something that you need to care about and you need to understand and you need to focus on. Performance is a priority when talking about mobile. You need to use and understand all the new tools available and try to embrace the change if you want to be happy, okay? So that's all, thank you. Now it's time for questions. We have like 9 minutes. I can play with the glass in the meantime. Okay, glass, take a picture.
Really, just one question. Maximiliano is waiting.
Mm-hmm. No questions?
Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you very much, Maximiliano. He will be also available at the speaker's zone, so you can speak with him directly. And we've got just short break because next speaker should be ready at 5 or 6 minutes. So see you after break.
Thank you.